Hey, hey, y'all. Oh, I am so happy. So happy to see your faces. Y'all. Okay. So I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. And so I wanted to let me finish this up right quick so that I can get everybody ready. Okay. All right. So I'm making sure that everyone has access to this. Mhm. So, y'all, it has been a crazy day. Um, I don't know if any of y'all know this, but I'm coming up on my birthday. Um, which what can you say? What can you say? So I'll be 39 on the 15th. And so I am doing something that I've never done before. Um, ever, never, ever. And that is simply, I'm going away. I'm going away. I'm leaving. Technically, right now, I'm on vacation. But oh God, it feels so good just to say that. Technically, let me say it again. Technically, right now, I'm on vacation, but I actually don't go to my vacation destination until tomorrow morning. So we are taking a trip to St. Simon's Island in Georgia, and I've rented a beach house, and we are going to soak up the sun, soak up the vibes. It is. I'm not ready. I'm not ready in a lot of ways. So I'm not ready. One, because I have not packed. I literally just finished cleaning out my fridge because someone is coming to sit with the hellhounds. God bless them. While while we're away. And so, I don't know. I feel like I don't know if it's because I'm Southern or if it's just because like I feel like just manners, but I wanted them to be able to have some food that they can grab at will and just clean like fridge and crisp and lemony when they open the fridge. Like I'm actually treating these people better than I treat myself on a daily basis. But it is what it is. So y'all, um that's happening. So that's happening. I'm also not prepared because I'm not used to going on vacation and actively not working. Every vacation I've been on except for like Christmas hot well, I've done it there too. Nearly every vacation I go on, uh, I'm working. I am working. My laptop is out, and this is this is when I am not allowed to do that. So I'm working on a smooth ass out of office message in the scheme of a Dr. Seuss poem. So yeah, that sun is a little sharp. Um, I felt like I looked very holy, like very like so y'all, we will be um I will be pinning a Dr. Seuss out of office message. So if you email me, know that's what you're going to get. If you would like to use it, please go forth. Uh, please feel free. I want everybody to feel free to leave an out of office message that rhymes and politely tells people to not bother you. Um, today, so that's what's been going on. Today, let's talk about the worksheets and let's talk about culture. Right? So It feels good just to be here, y'all. Like it's 2 o'clock in the evening, but I still got my coffee, and this is my first cup of the day. I saved it for y'all. I saved it just for you. So we're gonna talk about culture today, and I am not sure if you received it, but you should be able to you should be able to download the worksheets that I posted a week and a half ago to Patreon. So I am also pulling up this worksheet as well. So for those of you who did, let's get into it. Um, Examining your culture. Um, so just to give folks an update or reiterate, we are we here at Start by Talking have been thinking critically about how do we engage our Patreon folks? How do we ensure that we are providing you with content that you can take into your space, into your communities, and use? And so, one of the ways that we are looking at doing this is hellhounds are doing it. Is taking a self-guided learning approach, right? So I am offering a 4-tiered look into you thinking about how your own anti-racism or anti-blackness shows up. And so you will be receiving worksheets and assignments that you have the option of engaging in. You can download them, print them out, um, and you can fill them out, right? And so each month we're going to be conquering a new tier, and these spaces specifically will be a space for us to think about what it is that we are going to how we're going to take this material and how you can learn from it, right? So for this month we will be talking for the month of June, we'll be talking about culture. And so this is where we're going to be for the entire month. So every lesson will come from this. And so if you have the opportunity to download the Examining Your Culture um, uploads, you will be able to see 2 sheets. And so we're going to take it slow. We're doing 2 sheets at a time. And so we're starting with how do you examine your culture? And so this is to get into asking the question, how did you learn about who you are? And so there are 3 prompts on the first worksheet. And this is an opportunity for you to think about yourself in the span of identifiable characteristics that people give you, that you give yourself, that come with the role that you have as a professional, that come as a professional in your field, and also a characteristic that is a part of your specific institutions, right? So wherever you work, not specifically a field, but your work, your place of work, right? And so the ask is for you to start there. We're only going to start with this piece today, and you're going to also do some writing, right? And the goal is for you to think about what surprised you, what most surprised you from your writing, which of these pieces gave you the most hesitation, why, and which is the most accurate picture of how you see yourself. I think it's important for us to kind of be 10 toes down and planted into some ideologies around how we got here, who told us how we got here. Um, yeah. And so if you hadn't already downloaded that, I would absolutely encourage you to do so. And so the second actual worksheet is all about thinking through what happens when your culture benefits from white supremacy. Now, we're going to get there, not today. Today, I want to focus on examining your culture, and I want to add a little bit of context for that, and use this as a space to encourage you if you hadn't already done it. If you have done it, I would be so interested in hearing some insight that you have from it, and also um, the ways in which you use this exercise to tap into some ideologies, or some understandings about who you are and where they came from. So I'm interested in that. Um, let's talk about culture. So whenever I have a conversation about culture, with within my trainings, with oh my gosh, within um, small circles, within one-on-one coaching, it is usually an opportunity for us. For me, it's a way for me to kind of gauge who I'm talking to. Right? This work is hard. This work is very hard. And I love one on one spaces. I love small spaces to do this work simply because it allows me to be able to focus on a much smaller group of folks who may or may not be from the same communities, right? I think about some of the work that I do with certain groups within a sector of this country. These are folks who are tied to a neighborhood. These are folks who are tied to an institution. And so there are some parts of their culture that overlaps, even though there are lived experiences that are very different. Um, and it gets a little bit harder once that circle gets bigger. And so I love, love, love the opportunity. The other reason why I love it is because I hate when people sit in spaces because they're voluntold to sit in those spaces. It is such a difficult road to hoe, as my grandmother would say, when folks are sitting in spaces because they have to be. And these are folks who are usually not interested in this work at all. They have not done the work. And everything that you're going to say more than likely will rub up against their personal ideologies, their professional ideologies, and you would spend a majority of your time, if you're not careful, trying to undo the space that they are trying, the counter space that they're trying to create. Now, when I'm having a conversation, let's say with a one on one client, right? Someone reaches out to me and says, "Hey, Wanda, I follow you on social media. I have had the opportunity to hear you speak, to hear you train on some of your pieces, and I'm interested in getting some one on one support." Culture is where I start. Culture is a part of my intake process, right? And so it is through that I have the opportunity to see the world through your eyes. And it allows me um, the opportunity to really push, really gently push against what you have been taught about who you are and who folks who don't necessarily look like you are, right? So let's talk about it. Okay. Some of the questions that I usually ask when I am trying to determine if a potential client will actually be a client um, is one of my first questions is when did the switch flip for you? And what I mean by that is what is it? What specifically is it about now that makes this coaching important for you? And while on the surface that may not necessarily seem like a culture question, it's very much a culture question, y'all. Um, it's a culture question specifically because of the ability to talk about how you got here without actually naming that we're going to be talking about your culture. And so usually the answer that I get from folks is, oh, um, I am taking on a new position with work, and I'm wanting to make sure that this is a position that I feel comfortable being a part of. Um, oh, there's just some pieces, right, that I need to kind of that I've been wrestling with in private, and I'm wanting to make sure that I'm able to get a handle on or get some more clarity into why these things are so difficult. Sometimes I get a very honest, I got in trouble. I said something I should not have said. Um, and I'm very much afraid of losing my job. And so I need help, or I said something I should not have said. And this is one of the options that I had in terms of keeping my job. It was um, looking into this type of work as a resource that um, it's a box to check, right? And so I start with that question because this allows me to know, first of all, how I need to navigate. Now, the second question that I ask is, give me some insight into your family dynamic, right? Sometimes it knocks people socks off. It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Right? So what I usually hear, some of the common threads that I've heard when specifically when working with white assimilated or white identified folks has been, whether there was one parent in the household, or two parents in the household, or more than two parents in the household, or being parented by someone who's not a part of their household. One of the main dynamics, money, no money, um, coming from parents coming from background in education, little to no education, grew up in a big city, grew up in a small town, right? So no matter how varied these experiences are, there is a thread. And that is what I look for. I'm looking for the thread. And the common thread that usually comes up deals with how that particular family dynamic saw themselves and how they saw folks who looked different from them, right? And the value that was placed specifically on whiteness, whether you were a white identified person, whether you were an assimilating person of color. That is the thread, the messages that your folks, your people, your family received about who was valuable and who was not, right? Everything starts there. Understanding if you are a part of a group deemed valuable, understanding if you are a part of a group that was deemed not. And so, what that looks like is when I ask people, what were you taught about being white? What were you told about being white growing up? And the answer I usually get is nothing. I wasn't told anything about what it means to be white. My family never talked to me about what it means to be white. But as we dig deeper, we learn that there are words that are being used in a synonymous fashion with white without saying white. Good, good and hardworking, tireless and kind, respectful. I often hear hardworking, um, friendly, eager to help. Yeah, so those are some of the pieces that get described. Like these are the things that like we were taught to never be lazy. We were taught to never um to never engage in criminal behavior because that's not what we do, right? And that alone, right? That alone, raising your children to say that we don't steal, we don't harm, we work hard, we help others is beautiful. It's beautiful. The issue usually comes in when I ask the second question, the second part to that question, which is who were you being compared against when you learn those things, right? And so that's when it gets interesting. Now, I'm going to take a break and take a sip of coffee because this coffee is hot, hot, hot. Cafe Bustelo. I did not use my French press today. And so I'm about to get, because this can't go into the French press because it's too finely ground. So I actually haven't had Cafe Bustelo in a while and I am wanting to try. So take a coffee break. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. Oh, how I miss you. One more. Sorry, y'all. Wow. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Cafe Bustelo with creme brulee. Creamer. Good stuff. Okay. So the question that I asked following that is who are you being compared to? I.e., what did you learn about blackness? And again, it's this common thread, right? Whether I am talking to a white woman from the South, um, an indigenous person from the Midwest, um, a white assimilating person of color out in California, like it does not change the the message does not change. What I usually get is we were taught to not be them. We were taught to be this because to be good, to be hardworking, um, to be kind, to be generous is the exact total polar opposite of blackness. And so, and depending upon where you are, whether you are or you identify as whiteness, or you identify as whiteness, you identify as a non-black person of color, all the way down to identifying as black, depending upon where you sit on that spectrum, right? Um, there are different sub messages that you receive, right? So for my white clients, it is we were taught to stay away from black people. Period. There is no value there. There is no beauty there. There is no worth there. Now, for some non black people of color, the answers may vary. I've had some who have said, we were in competition to not be the worst representation of people of color. And so, our work every day, we work to understand that we had to be better than black people because black people are the worst. And being better than black people was the goal, right? So I want you to take a minute to just let that sit. Just let that sit with you. And I want you to think about what you were told about who you were, what you were told about blackness as well. And I want you to think of if any of this sounds familiar to you. And there are some people who often say, well, nothing was ever told about anything. So I can't be racist because We didn't talk about anything in my house. We didn't talk about white. We didn't talk about black. We talked about neighborhoods. And it's just like, this is the safe neighborhood. This is not the safe neighborhood. So you stay here. It's closer to home. I was like, but why were the neighborhoods not considered safe? Who lived there? Who lived there? And the other piece that we also have to understand is that when black folks are considered threats, that only impacts black people, right? In a larger sense. Um, or it seems to impact only black people on the surface, right? And that is the entire reasoning behind why anti blackness harms everybody, right? There's this idea that when black people are perceived as a threat, you know, only black people, only black folks suffer. But the truth is that anti-blackness is all about ensuring that everyone who is white is safe and everyone who is not deemed human. And so if you're not white, you're already considered black under this umbrella of white supremacy, i.e., you're considered a possible threat. You are considered someone who has probably have low value, low standing, right? Low worth. And so mechanisms like the mono minority myth and other ways of assimilation to whiteness are put in place in a way is seen as a way for non-black people of color and some black folks also to abandon blackness, right? And um, to shift to reflect safety, to reflect a different type of humanity that quote unquote blackness doesn't have access to. And so what ends up happening is that we have people of color who are also engaging in anti blackness in order to escape the impact of anti blackness in the hopes that they will be safer and will have access to the benefits of whiteness. And that is a problem for everybody. Because what also happens within that space is we have people of color who are fighting each other to attain this ideology that doesn't save us, does not save any of us. None of us are safe from it, right? So that's only 3.3 and a half questions in, right? Into my intake. And that is all about culture, right? So I go from this place where I'm not explicitly talking about culture, but then I move into this place of what were you taught. Name some family traditions or jokes that were centered in anti blackness or white supremacy, right? What are some family traditions that serve as gatekeeping strategies to ensure that you are growing up in a way that will allow you to still maintain these elements of white supremacy, right? So I read this story about, I have to go back and see, and if I can find it, I would absolutely put it on the Patreon page. But I read this story about, it was a body part of Nat Turner that had gone missing, that had been missing for quite some time. And if I take a moment, I will look it up right now. Hmm. So his skull. So shortly after Nat Turner was executed, his skull came up missing. Now, I don't know if you all are all familiar about Nat Turner, the slave who led a slave revolt that killed almost 60 white folks in 1831, right? So, Nat Turner, I think it was in Virginia. I think it was in Virginia. Um, Nat Turner's skull went missing. Went missing. Okay. So I had no idea. I had no idea um, that Nat Turner skull, and I think it, and I'm looking at right now, there's an article from 2003 from the Baltimore Sun that says Nat Turner's skull turns up far from sight of his revolt. Y'all, this was in 2003. Understand that this revolt happened on August 21st, 1831. Okay. Now, I there are various reasons, right? Um various explanations, right? Some folks said that or a Turner some of the Turner historians said that initially the skull was um was taken to Ohio via the Underground Railroad and ended up in Chicago somewhere. Um, but some folks claim that that's not true. Um, but the skull was returned. Okay. Now, I remember someone saying that although they don't know how his skull actually got moved, there was also another story. There was another story, and this is where I got it. There was another story that said that Nat Turner's skin was made into a change purse. Yeah. Now, I remember that story because Dr. Joy, the author who wrote Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome, um, talked about having a student in her class. When she talked about that, that student specifically said, my father has not necessarily Nat Turner's, but my father has a similar item, similar to a change purse, made out of the skin of a former slave. Now, why is this important and how does this factor into culture? Because the student in that class said that item gets passed down into his family from the oldest male heir. And so that son will be getting that item. And when he asks to bring it out to show because he was taking this class, his father said, absolutely not. That is an egregious example of how white supremacy gets passed down through family traditions. And if you think that story is an anomaly, I got a bridge in Brooklyn for sale right now. If you think there are no other pieces of Black folks existing as family heirlooms. I have land on the moon for sale. So my question in these spaces is all about culture, right? When I'm doing my one-on-one intake, because I need to know how deeply embedded and rooted um, you are to these ideologies and how much of it you see after I push back against it and what your reaction will be. Because your culture is not necessarily the air you breathe, but it's the way you take in the air. It's how you breathe. It teaches you how to breathe, how to see, how to look, right? Another question that I ask is what age were you when you recognized an act being racist? And what happened? What age were you when you realized that the joke that you were telling, that you heard your uncle or your grandfather, your favorite cousin tell, or your mom tell, and you realized that it was racist? When was the first time you became disappointed and confused in hearing that? And what did you do? And when did you realize, or how did it become a space where it was normalized? How did it become normalized to you? Right? So these questions and others I asked: when was the first time you heard the N word? Was the first time you used the N word? Um, how often do you default to whiteness? Where did you learn your racial slur? Your first, when upon hearing it, where did you learn it? Who did you learn it from when you first said it? Um, yeah. And so then we move into like, well, who do you want to be on the other side of this, right? Because if you can't answer those questions honestly, if you can't answer those questions without a little bit of humility, you're not ready to have this conversation with me on a weekly basis for the better part of a year. We can't do that, and you're not ready. And so my hope is that for folks who have not had the opportunity to work with after this, is what I usually tell them is that, you know, I would love to work with you, but there are some pieces around your understanding of how your culture shapes your belief systems around anti-blackness and white supremacy that I think you still need to do some work on. And so what I encourage you to do is to take these prompts that I just asked, and I'll send you a copy. Um, and I really want you to take at least 3 to 4 months to really dive into this work, to think this through, to get uncomfortable. And let's come back and have another conversation in about 4 months. Let's see where you are. I'm starting with culture within this series because I think it's so important for us to understand. It is so important for us to understand we cannot do this work until we know who we are and we know how we became who we are. We all are the sum of other people's parts, right? We grow up, we get poured into, we go away, some of us, we get other things poured into us, right? There's a point in time where you make the choice. It is a choice. You have to choose whether or not you're going to sift some things out to make room for other things, or whether or not you're just going to stay contained with what has already been poured in. And the only way for us to really think about this work, um, and ending white supremacy and dismantling white supremacy and ending anti Blackness is, what comfortable parts of our culture are we willing to interrogate, disrupt, and possibly give up for the betterment of people who are being harmed in disproportionate numbers? So I encourage you to do worksheet one. If you want me to take a look at it, please send me a message through Patreon. Let me know. I will be happy to take a look at your work. I will be happy to give you feedback. This my jam. This my shit. So just let me know. Next week we are going to talk. Oh, wait. Don't want to lie. Don't want to lie. Let me make sure. Oh yeah. So I'm going on vacation next week. That's what I said. But I'll be back before Saturday. And Saturday is officially Juneteenth. We're gonna have a black ass celebration over here. It's gonna be great. We're gonna talk about culture. We're gonna talk about Juneteenth. We're gonna talk about the worksheet. We're gonna have a great time. So, y'all, I so enjoyed this space. Y'all are dope. Please do your work. Please think through your culture. Answer some tough questions. I'll see you next week. Bring your coffee. It's still warm. I'm going to drink this right now. Wing and a prayer. And I'm headed to the beach, baby. Y'all take it easy. Bye.